Hey, I'm Tania Bhattacharyya, and you are listening to the Campfire Circle podcast. We are all about breaking down the boardroom table as the ultimate space of leadership, and instead replacing it with a campfire. Because that's where we share our stories. That's where we build warm community, and that is where there's always room. I'm building an impactful business in public through thought leadership, and I'm taking you behind the scenes all along the way. So if you want to stand out as you stand up for your mission, you are in the right place. So I know you've heard that saying, to be careful what you wish for, because it might just come true. And that's a little bit of what is going on in my world here. And so I just wanted to pop on and fire up my mic and just talk off the cuff about some thoughts that may or may not be resonant for you as well in the season of moving from winter to spring. It's a little different from a typical podcast episode that I have where I have a very specific topic that I'm teaching to or reflecting back on. I just want to talk about what I'm focusing on for the upcoming months because it's spring, right? Today's the first day of spring. And there's a lot of stuff thrown at us in January about it's New Year's, get into action. What is your resolution? What are your business goals for the year? What's your word of the year? And I don't know about you, but January is prime hibernation season. It's the deepest part of winter. It's like the coldest. I live in California, but I'm not trying to do a lot of stuff. But like I said, today is the first day of spring and I'm really feeling things all around me getting ready to blossom. And so over the last, 3 months, 6 months, over the last kind of chunk of time, there have been a couple of things that I have really been wishing for and wanting and marinating on and slowly making things happen like in the background. So from a professional sort of like standpoint or from a business standpoint, what's happening with my consulting firm is I have been creating an arm of my business that is specifically more of almost like a mini agency for B2B organizations, usually mid to large nonprofits or mission-driven companies like B Corps or larger social impact consulting firms, larger organizations that have a mission component to them, like a social purpose to them. And coming in and making a deeper impact by really training up their staff or their board or supporting their executive team or supporting their leader, like their executive person with not just LinkedIn, not just thought leadership on LinkedIn, but all types of thought leadership and visibility efforts. And what's funny that came up for me a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking at Jess Campbell, my dear friend Jess Campbell's conference, the Make It Happen conference for nonprofit consultants alongside another dear friend and Pisces sis, Camila Martin. And the panel was about the mistakes that we have made that kind of got us here. And I had the opportunity to reflect back on how that was my plan since day one. As I left my full-time nonprofit job and started to build a consulting business, that was like what I was going to do. That was who I was going to serve. But as I started, as many of us do, doing our research and delving into the kind of zeitgeist that's out there about online marketing and building a consulting business and just all the strategies that I was seeing, I ended up learning about things like lead magnets and webinars with a follow-up funnel and like a deadline to sign up and containers like group coaching programs and stuff like that. And so looking back on it now, 3 years later, I've realized that a lot of the things that I learned about and ended up incorporating were really more B2C strategies, even though I was initially intending to reach more of a B2B market. And like I said a couple of weeks ago at that event, it's not really a mistake. Like nothing is really ever a mistake. I'm never going to beat myself up about this. It's not even really a bad thing. It's actually a great thing because I ended up building an incredible community and finding amazing clients who tended to be more like coaches and consultants and service providers or like smaller business owners, whatever, just different kinds of folks. And that has been amazing. That has been awesome. And that has been where I've really been able to do what I do over and create a productized way of bringing people through a framework and people grow, right? And so two of my current larger retainer thought leadership clients were individuals who I first did a VIP day with. And it just naturally grew into a larger ongoing effort as their company grew, as their team grew, as their brand grew. Like we all just evolved together. And it really reminds me of what Mariah Cause talks about in terms of the champagne client or the champagne client continuum, which is something she spoke to when I had her here on the Campfire Circle podcast. And if you haven't listened to that episode, I definitely recommend it. It's such a good one. And I will drop that in the show notes. But so anyway, some of the things that I have been making happen in the background is really learning how to navigate the B2B marketplace as a consultant and how to prospect, how to lead a sales conversation, not the one discovery call, but like a 3 to 6 month sales conversation, or work with multiple decision makers and ask better questions to get at the heart of the problem that an organization is facing and why that even matters to them, and creating bespoke proposals and creating really customized scopes of work that are much longer term and just a different price point. And that has actually been a lot of fun. That has been it just speaks to my own strengths, needs, abilities, and preferences. I used to be a major gifts fundraiser. And so I already had this skill set it was different. It had different nuances, but I just forgot, like, this is something I really enjoy doing. And none of this was a mistake or even it was all just a process, because again, I would not be able to support these larger and more complex organizations with this work if I hadn't done this over and over in a really productized way for 3 years. And it's all good. So like we talk about B2B, we talk about B2C, there's so many acronyms, but at the end of the day, you're always just working with people. It's just people, it's just humans. And so the nuances are different, but the outcome is the same, which is influence, it's recognition, it's greater change-making capacity. And so it's different, but it's the same. It's like same, but different. And what I'm noticing this spring is it's 24, it's an election year. As I record this, Super Tuesday just happened. I might just go ahead and say that pretty much every mission-driven organization has a stake in this election, whether they work on reproductive justice, whether they work on equity, issues of equity, and just overall DEI, whether they're working on immigration, whether they are so many things, right? So many things. I would argue that every mission-driven organization has a stake in this election and some kind of perspective that they can share. Any company, organization, or leader share something relevant to this year's news cycles. And they're hopefully understanding that publishing their perspective and sharing their insights on these timely issues will further position them as a go-to voice in their sector and just open them up to opportunities to build that trusted brand. And so I would say that I have been known as a LinkedIn specific guide in the social impact sector. And I'm really grateful to have built that reputation. I'm really happy to have become known for that, because LinkedIn is a big part of my own story, right? It has been a really important way that I have built that. When I was a nonprofit leader, I was able to build up a brand and build up recognition for our organization. But it's also just been a way that I have built up my confidence in showing up and sharing my stories and just moving towards self-actualization. So I'm never going to stop doing that work, but I have really also enjoyed dipping my toe and in some cases just like cannonballing into the water of other types of thought leadership efforts for my organizational clients. So things like ghostwriting, just really huge kind of status quo shifting pieces for industry publications, or strategizing the community building pieces that begin to just naturally emerge from building up a strong brand, doing specific outbound outreach on LinkedIn for some campaigns, or like I said, training so that organizations can activate their people into ambassadors for their mission. And it is really fun and really exciting. So we just finished the February LinkedIn content sprint, and I really love that container so much. I got to tell you, my inner critic, or whatever you want to call that voice, when I first came up with the idea for my LinkedIn content sprint, it was a little spicy. And it was like, why are people going to pay to write their own content when they can just pay someone else to write that content? Yeah, there were a lot of thoughts. There were a lot of voices and thoughts that I was having. And of course, I obviously tried it anyway. And now we are 3 cohorts in. And what I am realizing is what's actually happening is it's not just about the content. Like, I already knew this, but I'm really seeing it's not about the content so much. It's that people are getting into the practice of becoming stronger communicators and more visible change makers. They're building the muscle of publishing their perspective, even when it's scary or uncomfortable. They're creating the conditions to play big and nurture their audience into a community. And nobody can do that for you. People can write your content for you, but they can't change the way that you are showing up around it. And not everybody needs that, but a lot of people do, because showing up and getting visible on a platform, on any platform, is scary. But it's easier when we do that together. And so I really do love the container of a sprint. And this might be a weird thing to say to follow up on that, but whatever. Again, I'm spring pivoting and just changing the ways that I do things. And so I'm actually going to be retiring the LinkedIn content sprint after the next cohort in June 2024. And so if you are one of just extraordinarily lovely and delightful people who have expressly reached out to say, this sprint's on my vision board, I want to do it at some point, or whether you've reached out or not, if you've thought it, June is that point. June is that time and that final time. So I'm a manifester. I like to inform. I just want to let you know that's coming up. So I'm going to drop that link to the waitlist in the show notes. And then what else is happening? So on the personal front, my husband and I are moving into a home. We've been looking for 2 years. We finally found it. And I shared this story in my email newsletter a few weeks ago. Because again, this theme of authenticity and showing up as we are and sharing our story to build connection. That theme is always coming up in my life, probably because I'm looking for it, but it's always showing up. And because how you do one thing is how you do everything. So it's always going to be showing up, whether it's from the business perspective or just whatever is going on in my personal life. So long story short, what happened there is did the tour. It was like the, I don't know, 100th, we had seen so many freaking houses. We'd seen so many houses. And so we did the tour. We met the homeowners. They lived in that home for 3 decades. We got along. We shared some stories. We vibed with each other. And our offer was not the highest offer because there was an institutional investor who, just money bags over here, just able to offer way more than we could. But the seller, the couple, they wanted us to have it anyway because there was a connection point, right? They had made a lifetime of memories there. And we were probably about the same age that they were when they moved in. I don't know. I'm just postulating here, but they wanted us to have that same experience that they got to have. And I know that might seem bonkers and a little bamboozling and just, is she even telling the truth? Especially if you've been in this housing market for a while. It is just, I don't have to tell you, it's a lot. But truthfully, deep down, I think that's humanity. Like humans at their core are always going to be values driven over money driven at their core, right? That doesn't always mean that's what they're going to do. That's the action that they're going to take. But deep down, we are driven by our values, and stories help us connect at the level of those values, which is why I'm such an advocate for storytelling for impact driven business owners. But all that to say is I'm actually moving at the time of this recording. I'm moving tomorrow, which is part of why I wanted to just whip out the mic and drop some thoughts because I don't know the next time my mic's going to be plugged in. I'm going to be living out of boxes for a little bit. What else is going on? Speaking of spring, I am going to Japan for cherry blossom season. I'm so excited. I think this will complete my goal of visiting Japan during all 4 seasons. I got to go during the winter time to Hokkaido last year. I got to go to Kyoto and Osaka in the fall of 2019. I went once before, 26, I don't remember, a long time ago. And this time we are going to Tokyo and Okinawa. So the day this episode comes out, the first day of spring, we're going to be flying over there. So, and I'm turning 37. So Pisces season is coming in hot. It is a wild time to be alive. And all that to say, there's a lot of magic happening over here. And a lot of the things I've been wishing for have been coming true. And I did not necessarily want them all to happen in the course of 1 month, but that's what's happening. And I am blessed AF while living through a lot of kind of individual change and a lot of kind of communal change. My amazing client friend, Dr. Keisha Harris, talks about how gardens are full of conflict. She has a garden. She speaks really beautifully to this from the context of racial equity transformation, which is the work that she does. But I think it can also be used for all kinds of change and the blossoming that comes in spring. Because she talks about how when you plant a seed, it is disruptive, the soil is broken apart, everything gets pushed around as the bud grows and it's uncomfortable, it's a little messy. But then what do you get? You get a flower, you get a plant, you get some fruit. And so that's what's happening over here. And so I did want to let you know as well, I'll be taking a little break from this podcast, from the Campfire Circle podcast, to tend to the magic that's going on in my business and in my life for a little bit, maybe a month, maybe 2 months, maybe I don't know how long. But in the meantime, I would really love to hear from you on what you'd like for me to cover when I get back. This is the Campfire Circle podcast. And so my vision has always been to speak to a new type of visible leadership that is different from the old, stuffy, traditional, homogeneous, classic boardroom table kind of leadership. I am envisioning a kind of leadership where there is more than enough seats for everybody. There, one that is really rooted in community, where that circle can get as big as it needs to get. One where everybody feels comfortable sharing their stories, whether that's the scary stories like the mistakes or the happy stories of the magic, all the lived experience that we have that helps guide the work that we do through our businesses today and make a social impact. So, what do you want to hear? What do you want to know? What are you curious about when it comes to thought leadership and building influence and recognition and improving your change making capacity? So, reach out directly to me on LinkedIn. I'll still be on there. Reach out on LinkedIn, shoot me an email. And if you do want to stay in touch with kind of what I'm learning about, what's going on, business advice, tips, just stay in touch on a more regular basis. The best way is to join my email newsletter, the Firestarter. It goes out every Wednesday afternoon. And so all the links to everything I talked about is in the show notes. So I can't wait to hear from you. And I will talk to you in a bit. Okay, so you've heard from us. Now I want to hear from you. Leaving a review helps us so much in growing our reach and supporting more folks with this podcast. And even better, I would love for you to send me a note on LinkedIn with your takeaways from this episode. I cherish and respond to every message, so I can't wait to hear from you. And if you want to go even deeper, check out the show notes to take your next step.